It's Wednesday, July 15th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. Sure has been an exciting week so far here at NORML West Coast Media Headquarters. As many of you know from the blog, I've been contacted by the people at the Blazed and Confused tour. This is Snoop Dogg along with the band Slightly Stupid and Stephen Marley, who are on tour across the country right now. And they asked me to find NORML chapters for them to table at their concerts. They first asked for Irvine, California, which is kind of short notice. We weren't able to do it, but now we've got almost all the dates filled in with NORML chapters. Tonight at Red Rocks in Colorado, Mile High NORML will be there. On the 17th, Friday, Oregon NORML is tabling for the Portland Coliseum gig. At the Gorge in George, Washington, my chapter in Spokane, Inland Northwest NORML will be out there. In West Valley City, Utah, the fledgling Salt Lake City NORML has confirmed to go out there. We've got Georgia NORML taking care of Atlanta, Georgia on the 30th. In August, the University of Central Florida will take care of Orlando's concert. We've also got Asbury Park, New Jersey at the Stone Pony. NORML New Jersey will be there. And at Festival Pier in Philadelphia in August, Philly NORML will be taking care of that gig. Where there's still a few other gigs we need to fill in. We still have some other gigs that need to be filled. At the July 19th gig in Nampa, Idaho, my own birthplace. I don't have a NORML chapter, but I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. Also, Vancouver, British Columbia, Mountain View, California, Chula Vista, California, Tampa, Florida, St. Augustine, Florida, Columbia, Maryland, and Boston, Massachusetts are still some gigs where I need to book some NORML tables. So if you're in those areas and you belong to NORML and you want to get there at that concert, send me an email at stash@norml.org. I was also asked on the blog about my own travels this summer, since I'm going to be heading all around the country, trying to open up more NORML chapters and speaking at various hemp fests. The full schedule's online. I'll be at the Emerald Empire Hemp Fest this weekend, Saturday. That's tentative in Eugene, Oregon. And for folks back in my hometown, Nampa, Idaho, Boise, Idaho, the southwestern Idaho area, Saturday, July 25th, I will be at the Flying Pie Pizzeria on Fairview Avenue from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. to meet with any activists who want to get involved in starting a Boise NORML chapter. Then, of course, in August, we've got Seattle Hemp Fest. And once September hits, I go from weekend to weekend. I go from Portland Hemp Stock on one weekend, Boston Freedom Rally the next weekend, NORML National Conference the weekend after that, the Great Midwest Harvest Fest in Madison after that, and then a trip to the University of Central Florida in Orlando for a speaking gig. So if you'd like to get involved with NORML and have me come out and help organize and speak to the people in your area, send me an email at stash@norml.org. All it costs is a plane ticket, my expenses, and a place to crash. It's a NORML shout out. Yes, it's also time for a normal shout out. I'm giving a shout out to the folks in Los Angeles and San Francisco who'd like to be part of a NORML street team for promoting the NORML National Conference. We need some boots on the ground to pass out flyers at the local dispensaries and other places in the LA County, San Francisco areas to promote the conference. So if you're interested in being a NORML street team leader, send me an email at stash@normal.org and we'll have all sorts of special NORML swag as your payment, as well as some discounts for getting yourself to the NORML conference. Again, stash@normal.org if you'd like to be involved with the NORML street team. In political news, I have this quick little quote. I don't know if you've been following the hearings for Judge Sonia Sotomayor, but she did utter a quote that was quite enjoyable for those of us in the community. Give it a listen.
In that case, the reason for that case is that apparently, I'm not an expert in marijuana growing, but apparently when you're growing marijuana, there's a certain heating lights that you need, at least that's what the case was describing, and it generates this enormous amount of heat that wouldn't generally come from a home.
But wouldn't the Supreme Court be a much nicer place if some of you did have some expertise in marijuana growing? Now, coming up on your NORML Daily Audio Stash, we start with your hemp headlines, beginning with more from that CBS News Marijuana Nation report showing that marijuana is no longer the focus of anti-drug advertising. Our fledgling chapter in the United States Virgin Islands is receiving some repression and censorship in their attempt to get organized. Los Angeles City Council rejects 28 new dispensaries, and a commentary from Santa Barbara on how to stop your kids from becoming, quote, potheads that will probably surprise you. Today is Wednesday, so we go to our cannabis science segment. Dr. Mitch is back from vacation, and he's got lots to say about the new study, the long-term study, showing no increase in schizophrenia even as cannabis use increased in the United Kingdom. Our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, brings you Reggae Wednesday and Jaw Mason with the song Let's Get Some High Grade. And in our normal newsmakers, we speak with Dr. David Bierman of California, who's a member of the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine, and his call for other cannabis physicians to join the Academy to set standards for medical marijuana. We're rocking the blog at stash.normal.org. Don't forget to check it for all of the transcripts of the news stories, plus videos and other news stories we don't have time for here on the podcast. And now it's time for your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Marijuana no longer focus of anti-drug campaigns. From CBS News. Over the last several years, without many people realizing it, the U.S. government has changed the focus of its anti-drug efforts, de-emphasizing marijuana in favor of prescription drugs. A CBS News survey of government and nonprofit anti-drug groups has found a retreat from anti-marijuana campaigns over the past several years as prescription and over-the-counter drug abuse has grown amongst teens. In fact, The Partnership for a Drug-Free America, the nation's largest creator of anti-drug messages, hasn't produced a single anti-marijuana public service advertisement since 2005. The change comes as a result of the decline in marijuana use amongst teens and growing worry over the abuse of prescription drugs. Marijuana use has been declining for 10 years, and past month use is down 25% since 2001, according to the largest tracking study in the U.S., Monitoring the Future by the University of Michigan. Meanwhile, prescription drug abuse has held steady over the past 5 years, according to the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, with nearly 1 in 5 teens abusing prescription medications to get high. Marijuana use has gone down amongst teens over the past 10 years. What else has increased over the past 10 years? Acceptance of medical marijuana. Funny how the drug warriors never try to turn that correlation into a causation. Prescription drug abuse has increased over the past 5 years. What else has increased over the past 5 years? Drug testing of students for every extracurricular activity following a 2002 Supreme Court decision, as well as easier access through the internet, as well as pharmaceutical company advertisements. Want to try out for football team, cheerleading, band, or chess club? Then don't puff that reefer. It'll make you fail that test for days or even weeks. Instead, why not ask your prescriber about Fuckatol, the drug that must be safe because you see it on TV? They don't even test for it, and if they did, it would flush out of your system in a day or two anyway. Fuckatol. It's perfect for that Friday night party when you know you need to pee clean on Monday. U.S. Virgin Islands newspaper refuses NORML recruitment ad. Wow, the probationary chapter of NORML in the U.S. Virgin Islands hasn't even been officially certified yet, but the activists down there are already heating up the media and writing outstanding press releases. Paid classified ad rejected by St. Croix Avis newspaper due to inappropriate content. In the process of starting a chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in the U.S. Virgin Islands, USVI NORML has repeatedly placed classified ads in the trader publications owned by Virgin Islands Daily News and continue to enjoy a very good relationship with them. The exact same ad was submitted to the St. Croix Avis for publication. When calling today to verify they had received the ad copy and payment, we were told that they had received the ad and payment, but that they were being returned to us and the ad would not be run. Shocked, we questioned, "Excuse me?" and were told that the publishing manager said that because of the content of the ad, they were not going to publish it, and that we shouldn't bother submitting any more if it relates to the same subject matter. The ad copy read, quote, "Seeking initial board members and supporters interested in joining a not-for-profit organization committed to the legalization of medical marijuana and the decriminalization of marijuana in the U.S. Virgin Islands. All interested parties are encouraged to submit a resume and letter of interest to usvinormal@gmail.com." End quote. Well, the First Amendment does guarantee us the freedom of speech, but it does not guarantee that we get anyone to publish it. But I always do find it ironic when a newspaper, something that can only exist because of the First Amendment, starts banning free speech. LA City Council rejects 28 new dispensaries. From the LA Times blog. The Los Angeles City Council has denied applications from 28 medical marijuana dispensaries that wanted permission to operate despite a moratorium, clearing the way for the city to shut down any that have opened. Since the council started to consider applications last month, it has denied every one, ruling against 43, including the 28 on Tuesday. The council is struggling to assert control over the sale of medical marijuana in the city after its moratorium on new dispensaries proved toothless. Hundreds have opened despite the 2007 ban. The city has stopped accepting applications for exemptions, but 883 were filed before the council closed the loophole. Until it adopts a permanent ordinance to control dispensaries, a task that has confounded the council for years, it intends to plow through the applications. I'm a supporter of dispensary access to medical marijuana as long as the right to grow your own is maintained, even despite the same as street dealer prices. Because I understand that the reason the legit dispensary market must be so expensive is because of the illegitimate black market. A dispensary can't sell a legit $50 ounce only to have someone turn it into a black market $300 ounce, and they have to pay the grower's inflated wholesale price lest the grower just sell it on the black market. I get that. The problem is that the goldmine of profitability that this black market pricing scheme entails attracts all manner of entrepreneurs from all over the country looking to cash in. While most dispensaries are well-run, clean, have the patient's best interests at heart, are run by patients and caregivers, and even some offer other services that truly reveal their effort to engage in holistic caregiving, a few of these dispensaries don't make much effort to distinguish themselves from being just a pot dealer with a dingy hole-in-the-wall storefront. I worry about the image of the California dispensaries and how it plays on legalization politics across the country, and I don't want to see the bad apples spoil the bunch. Richard Lee's Oaksterdam, the Pharmacy, and other well-run professional dispensaries make for fantastic public relations, but when the media can point to LA County and say, there are more dispensaries than McDonald's, no matter how well run they are, the shock factor makes legislators want to tighten the new medical marijuana laws to the point where nobody can grow at home and dispensaries are a tightly run limited state nonprofit monopoly, like in Minnesota, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, and Arizona, for examples. I hope Los Angeles does come up with reasonable zoning and business standards, and I would hope they would consult with people like Richard Lee, Debbie Goldsberry, and others who have experience in the matter. Keep your kids off pot by becoming a pothead. I know this is written as satire, but this column I picked up from the Santa Barbara Independent does have an element of truth in it. I believe that part of the reason teen marijuana smoking has declined in the past 10 years is because the acceptance of medical marijuana turns hip rebellious reefer into boring old folks medicine. If a guy like Michael Phelps can suck skunkweed recreationally and still win 14 gold medals, what's to dissuade teens from taking their first curious puff? In my experience, there's only one way to keep your kids from becoming potheads. You've got to become one yourself. That's right. Light up for the sake of sobriety. Inhale in the name of clean living. Take a hit for the temperance team. My parents, you see, were big tokers. They smoked dope. They talked dope. They may have even sold dope. In 5th grade health class, I raised my hand and informed the teacher that THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, is short for tetrahydrocannabinol. And when I came home from class, spouting the potential health risks of smoking it, my parents shouted, "Lies!" and stormed the campus the next day to shame my teacher for preaching the ridiculous propaganda of the establishment. But in fact, the school didn't need to convince me not to smoke Mary Jane, grass, or rope, as it was reportedly called, on the streets. Have you ever heard of someone refer to reefer as rope? I've been listening closely since 5th grade. Never. Getting high was something my parents did, and as such, it was the single lamest thing a human being could do. When friends began proffering spliffs at high school parties, I tried to hide my distaste, but the occasional, "Ugh, seriously?" would slip out. Why would I fill my lungs with old people herb? I'm not saying I never puffed a blunt, but I didn't do it early, and I didn't do it much. It just didn't hold a mystery to me. NORMLCon 2009, Yes We Cannabis, September 24th through 26th, 2009, in San Francisco, California.
The war on drugs has been a utter failure, and I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
President Obama was right in 2004, and 5 years later, the American people agree.
As regards to legalization, it's not in the president's vocabulary, and it's not in mine.
We're working hard to make sure legalization is in the drug czar's vocabulary,
whether legalizing marijuana would improve the economy. The answer is no. I don't think that is a good strategy.
There's nothing funny about legalization, Mr. President. Registration, sponsorships, and vending information is available at NORML.org or by calling 888-67-NORML. Who is telling you the truth about marijuana? The government? Scientists? Doctors? Which claims are scientifically valid and which claims are reefer madness? Every Wednesday, we separate the stems of propaganda from the buds of truth with NORML's look at
Cannabis science.
It's been a while, but it's time for some new cannabis science from our good friend Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Welcome back, Doctor.
Oh, it's great to be back.
You've been on vacation, I hear. You just got back from Paris, France.
Indeed, and just wanted to mention that NORML board member Rick Steves wrote the book that was my guide. His Paris 2009 really made it a good time for me.
Yeah. I think when you check the travel book, top 20, like 10 or 12 of his books are in the top 20. So it's really amazing work he does out there.
Oh, glad to hear it. And yeah, it really, kept me from having a really bad time and saved me a lot of cash too.
Yeah, that's the important part, saving the money. And,
if I could actually give a shout out to the Ohio yogis who were there and were, willing to be generous with a guy who, is reluctant about how he travels, that'd be great too.
Thanks a lot, Ohio yogis. And also, folks, if you, want to get your hands on a Rick Steves official all hemp, well, aside from the metal in the zippers, all hemp backpack, you can get it at the NORML site at NORML.org. Look for the link for NORML gear. That'll take you to the store where you can order the Rick Steves hemp day pack, I think it's called. Now, I'm really excited to get you back here on the show because since you've been gone, there's been a new paper that's been released. We talk a lot about this supposed link between the use of cannabis, especially in teenage years, and the supposed increased risk of schizophrenia and psychosis because of that. Tell our listeners a little bit about this new paper.
So this is really great, and I'm really glad to see it was out there. Essentially, no surprise to our listeners, there isn't a link between rates of use of cannabis and rates of schizophrenia in these really large data sets that are basically from the United Kingdom. And I was so delighted that this journal was willing to put this out because generally if, there isn't a significant finding, they don't think it's news and they don't want to get into it. But this really helps dispute some of this, problem with, marijuana causes schizophrenia. As you had mentioned before, we're seeing folks writing letters to the editor and columns saying, one thing we got to keep in mind is that marijuana is going to make people psychotic, and that's going to add all these crazy expensive costs. And schizophrenia is a really debilitating disease and an expensive one, but really doesn't look like marijuana causes it. All this started out a few years ago when a meta-analysis looked at 7 different studies and got a lot of press saying that they found a link between marijuana use and schizophrenia. I discussed these at the NORML conference before. When you look really close, in fact, only one of those studies was looking at schizophrenia, and it wasn't turning out anywhere near as dramatic as the way the media were presenting it. What I like about this study is it's really looking across from basically in the mid-90s on, and showing, look, the rates of cannabis use and the rates of schizophrenia aren't going together, and in fact, schizophrenia isn't even on the rise, despite some pretty dramatic changes in cannabis use when you look all the way back to the 1970s. I think part of that is about how schizophrenia really develops, and I'm happy to get into some of that research if you want. But the bottom line is cannabis does not make people psychotic.
Yeah, and this was a study, I think, over 10 years analysis of the rates of schizophrenia and the rates of cannabis in the United Kingdom. Included lots of these hospitals, thousands and thousands of people that they looked at. And again, like you say, we don't find any causation there between or even a correlation between schizophrenia and the use of cannabis. Let's talk a little bit about that schizophrenia research that you're mentioning, though, and what the potential causes may be.
Well, so it's interesting because an old colleague of mine back when I was at University of Southern California, Sarnoff Mednick, has done some of the best work on this. And really, schizophrenia seems to develop from some kind of genetic risk combined with some kind of environmental onslaught, usually really early in life. So he finds, like, children of schizophrenic mothers whose moms happen to have the flu during the second trimester of pregnancy, well, they're at elevated risk for schizophrenia. But it's got to be something really serious, and you've got to have that genetic component. And it just doesn't seem to play out with even some of the heavier cannabis use early in life, not that I'm recommending that. But the one study that had any support for this was the one by Timmy Moffat's group done down in New Zealand. And it was folks who basically smoked pot 50 times by like age 15 and who happened to have this relatively novel combination of genes. And then when I went through the table of it and looked at it all, I was like, well, what is this based on? And you look out at the percentage and stuff like that. It was really all came down to 7 people who happened to have this genetic combination and had used pot this much and had ended up with some kind of psychotic symptoms. And it's just, too much to, basically change federal policy because 7 people happen to have a rough day and hear some voices. I'm not recommending that schizophrenics should use cannabis. Thornycraft's data back in 1990 suggests that it really isn't good for folks who are experiencing that form of mental illness. But the idea that we should, throw people in jail because 7 people went psychotic is clearly just out of bounds.
Yeah, and this is something I always looked at from just, a non-scientific, anecdotal, common sense sort of perspective. The highest rates of teen use of marijuana go back to 1979, and some of the lowest rates are 1992, and we didn't see much difference in the number of schizophrenics in America. So,
in fact, it's been below 1%.
Yeah. Time. Exactly.
One of the other things that I think is contributing, in fact, is that we've got better prenatal care now. So these environmental onslaughts that are related to, having some doctor yank your brain out with a forceps when you're being born are certainly a big combat. But the idea that, suddenly somebody who has never had a psychotic symptom and no psychotic members of the family is going to smoke pot one time and end up in the hospital for the rest of their lives is just absurd.
Yeah, exactly. And does also highlight something we see, and I talk to Paul Armentano about this all the time, in the media, where, if there's a study that comes out that even slightly hints at the suggestion that cannabis could cause, toe jam and goiters, that becomes a mantra for years and years and years, despite all the follow-up studies that come after that show it to be complete bunk. So, like you say, it's good that they actually published this data and highlighted it.
Well, and I'm hoping that, media outlets like this one will pick this up, and as word gets out, we'll get less and less of this argument as we move closer and closer to a much more equitable way to treat the plant.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And I'm looking forward also, just to change the subject a little bit here, to the NORML National Conference that we're having at the end of September. And you'll be at that conference. Can you give us a little preview of the panel you'll be on and what sort of topics we'll be covering?
Well, so Paul and I are still bouncing some of this around, but what I wanted to, get a message across about is that changes in laws don't seem to have this dramatic impact on changes in use, particularly when it comes to teens. So, a nice survey that some folks and I have done looking at some of the states that have had medical cannabis laws the longest. We don't see spikes in teen use in those states that are any different from changes nationally or in neighboring states that don't have medical cannabis laws, and that in fact the negative consequences of long-term use have probably been exaggerated, and short-term experimentation, even early in life, don't seem to lead to these dreaded negative things that we had all necessarily had beaten into us in junior high. But also that I want to make sure that prevention efforts basically stop making those arguments so we can focus on things that really are problems for teens, and we can tell them about drugs that genuinely do cause harm, and do so with some credibility. So, they're not saying, hey, aren't you the guy who told me marijuana is going to make me crazy. Why should I believe you when you tell me methamphetamine shrinks my brain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And just today I've posted a couple of stories, one from CBS News discussing how they're not even really putting out anti-marijuana ads anymore from the ONDCP. It's all about the increase in prescription drug abuse among teens. And then a satirical article I picked up from Santa Barbara where a woman said the best way to keep your kids from smoking pot is to become a pothead yourself, because they'll see it as, the old folks drug and they won't be that interested in it. Do you think that the increased acceptance of medical marijuana has led to teenagers turning off from marijuana, from, it not being as a rebellious thing anymore?
It's curious. Rod Skager has a chapter in my book, Pot Politics, about this. In part, nobody really wants to use a drug that's something grandma's using to keep from vomiting. It just doesn't sound all that enticing. And I think taking that forbidden fruit aspect away does seem to have a certain amount of impact. While I was in Europe, I talked to some teens as best I could about their attitudes about drinking. And because it's not the big deal where people get carded and it's insanely enforced in the same way, alcohol to them is just not the same kind of rite of passage that it is here in the States. So nobody there turns 21 and gets completely blotto on their birthday the way it seems to happen here. And I think that's a contributor. That satirical piece about, your kids basically going against whatever you do, of course, frightens me to no end, because my 8-year-old joked about becoming a Republican.
Well, I hope there's a cure. Before I let you go, Doctor, I wasn't sure. I know that Paul has a new book coming out pretty soon. I wasn't sure if you had a new book coming out soon, but if you did, I wanted to give you a chance to mention it.
My book, Substance Abuse Treatment, is out on Amazon right now, and people can get it there from their local bookstore. It's really primarily focused towards treatment providers, psychologists, and social workers and folks like that. But if you want to have something fun to thumb through to see how treatment ought to go, and that might help you pick out somebody who would be a good therapist, by all means, give it a look.
All right. Dr. Mitch Earlywine from State University of New York at Albany, thanks again for joining us here for our Cannabis Science segment.
Thanks so much.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org. The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. It's Reggae Wednesday, and today we hear from one of the reggae greats, Jah Mason, with his classic tune, Let's Get Some High Grade. Jah Mason, a supporter of the Marijuana Music Awards for the past 2 years, is ranked as one of the highest-rated DJs to emerge from Jamaica. He has scored a string of #1 hits in the reggae charts and continues to reach the top with his recent CD, Keep Your Joy. Jaw Mason's uplifting voice brings positivity into today's dancehall and reggae music. He has toured internationally across the Caribbean, Europe, the UK, Japan, Australia, and he continues to utilize his talented voice worldwide. Keep updated about Jaw Mason at myspace.com/JawMasonOnline. And enjoy today's toker tune, Let's Get Some High Grade by Jaw Mason.
Yo, turn it up, I'm a bunny up. It's my chalice. Smoking all day in my palace. It's all about high grade. Gotta let them know. I am Mason, fire Mason. Let's get some high grade and just smoke and get high. Don't be afraid. Puff the smoke to the sky. Give me the ice, yo, that's my daily offer. My breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, my supper. High grade party, pull down the shutter. Herbs for life. Keep on utter. Canada, Europe, even Merrimaca. Ganja for real, me no want no tobacco. Real thing, me no want no taka. High grade, if it tappa. Alright, let's get some high grade and just smoke and get high. Don't be afraid of the smoke to the sky. Some high grade and just smoke and get high. I'll be a high grade, me request. Cocoa, me reject. Meditation so high, me eyes them a reflect. Spliffing on me mouth, fat like a rocket. Scandal bag of weed in on me pocket. Highway me take through the cops, them me lock it. Reach at the toll, cologne me go left it. I know, Jaja Mason no fi press it. High grade weed me now left it. Alright then. Let's get some high grade and just smoke and get high. Don't be afraid of the smoke to the sky. Well, give me the ice, my daily offer, my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, my supper. High grade party, pull down the shutter. Herbs for life. Keep on utter. Canada, Europe, even Merrimaca. Ganja for real, no tobacco. Real thing, when I want no chaka. High grade, see the tappa. Alright then, let's get some high grade and just smoke and get high. Don't be afraid of the smoke to the sky. Get some high grade and just smoke and get high. Don't be afraid. Puff the smoke to the sky.
Have you considered medical marijuana? Double-blind, peer-reviewed studies have found cannabinoid therapies to be successful in treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, brain cancers, chronic pain, diabetes mellitus, dystonia, fibromyalgia, GI disorders, hepatitis C, HIV/AIDS, hypertension, incontinence, MRSA, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pruritus, rheumatoid arthritis, sleep apnea, and Tourette's syndrome, as well as anecdotal evidence suggesting relief from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, plus reduction in the need for narcotic painkillers. Side effects of medical marijuana can include euphoria, relaxation, anxiety, panic reactions, paranoia, tachycardia, dry eyes, dry mouth, concentration and reaction time impairment, appetite increase, and in 37 states, arrest and incarceration. But medical marijuana is non-toxic and cannot cause overdose. Medical marijuana. It's not for everyone, but ask your doctor if medical marijuana may be right for you. The effects of marijuana prohibition are felt by all Americans in every walk of life, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, party politics, social status, wealth, gender, sexual orientation, or even one's use or non-use of marijuana. As the marijuana smokers lobby, NORML hears the stories of these average Americans and brings them to the attention of our policymakers and our fellow citizens in this segment we call NORML Newsmakers. Joining me now on the telephone is Dr. David Behrman from California. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
We're here to talk about a new academy that's been formed, the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine. You and Dr. Lucido involved in this, and I was hoping you could just tell our listeners a little bit about the organization and what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, what we want to accomplish is to make sure that cannabinoid medicine has the appropriate respect that it deserves, and also to give people an opportunity to turn to an authoritative source for medical information regarding the benefits of cannabis and other cannabinoids.
Okay, so we've got yourself and Dr. Frank Lucido. Are there other people involved that we should mention?
Absolutely. Dr. Greg Carter, who was just interviewed on MSNBC and is on the faculty at the University of Washington School of Medicine, is our president. We've got Chris Fitchner. Dr. Fitchner was the former director of the Illinois State Department of Mental Health. We've got Sunil Agarwal, who is a PhD, and he's going for his MD degree up at the University of Washington. I think he was recently featured in a small article in High Times. David Astro is involved. He's a semi-retired psychiatrist who was involved a lot in dealing with appropriate treatment of AIDS. And Jeff Hergenrather up in Sebastopol, who is currently the president of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians here in California, and also Christine Pialetti, who is a board-certified gynecologist down in Los Angeles. So we think we've got a good core group here, and we've been getting more and more interest from around the country and people wanting to join. And this is really the ground floor. I would say to your listeners that are physicians or that are researchers in cannabis and cannabinoids, or that are students, that they should think about joining. And they certainly should check our website, which is www.aacmsite.org, the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine.
AACMsite, SITE.org. Yep. And this is for physicians and people interested if they'd like to join the academy and help to fulfill the mission of promoting cannabinoid medicine and the proper study of it and respect for it. Do you see your mission as being primarily one of outreach to physicians and people in the medical community, or also combining to just reach out to the regular folks out there that may not know a lot about medical use of cannabis?
Well, we want to reach out to the regular folks, hopefully with the assistance of the media, such as yourself, because often you have people like the drug czar who is not qualified. And frankly, the person who did the best in drug policy in this country was also the person who did the worst, and that would be Richard Nixon. Nixon did the worst by inaugurating the drug war, and he did the best by being the only president whose budget has had more money go to treatment than to interdiction, and he clearly had the most qualified person to be the drug czar. These people that are now the drug czar know nothing about drugs. I mean, General McCaffrey was a joke. The man, was, frankly, in my opinion, guilty of medical malpractice. But I guess you can't go after a general for medical malpractice.
I was going to say, it seems to me that over the past couple of decades, we've seen a lot of input from law enforcement, let's say, at the federal level and at the state level when it comes to various medical cannabis laws. You know, they always say they only enforce the laws, they don't make them. But when it comes to medical cannabis, it seems like they've all received some sort of medical training, or at least they think they have, because they're all weighing in on this. Could you give us our thoughts about that?
As a matter of fact, fact, some years ago at the Drug Policy Alliance, I made a comment that I thought was somewhat facetious in asking a question of the LEAP panel. I think Law Enforcement Against Prohibition is a wonderful organization. And I said, I think maybe, we should go after some of these police officers or judges or assistant DAs for practicing medicine without a license. And while I got the laugh that I thought I was going to get, I was somewhat surprised that, they took it seriously and said, this is maybe not a bad idea. And it is very disturbing as a physician to have people try to practice medicine who have absolutely no background. I just came back from a 4-day conference outside of Chicago put on by the International Cannabinoid Research Society. And believe me, these guys are not into the medical marijuana wars. They're into finding out how cannabinoids and cannabis work. They've been meeting now, I think this was their 19th annual meeting, and these folks are from all over the world and doing really good work. And who else did we have there? We had the largest pharmaceutical company from Japan, which has most of the worldwide distribution rights for tincture of cannabis produced by GW Pharmaceuticals. And of course, GW Pharmaceuticals was there. I mean, this whole thing is a lesson in absurdity. I mean, you could not make up anything more absurd. And what the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine wants to do is to bring some science, to bring some research, to bring some clinical observation, to bring some sanity to the field. At the same time, we want to let the general public know that most of the doctors that are involved in making recommendation for the medicinal use of cannabis are doing things the normal, standard way. And there's a small group of people who are practicing what I would call minimalist medicine and what Frank Lucido has referred to as HMO medicine. And we think that the standards ought to be higher than that. And that's one of the things that we've done is set the gold standard for the practice of cannabinoid medicine. And we want to encourage patients to seek out people who have board certification in cannabinoid medicine. And that board certification will begin to be noticed in about 6 months to a year as we have people take our oral and written tests and when we provide them with the certification that you guys have met the gold standard. And that's something that we would encourage discriminating patients to look at. I think one of the things about cannabinoid medicine that's really important is that our job, as any medical professional's job, is to deal with the ill. And we're really not involved in trying to change the laws dealing with recreational cannabis. And I think you've got a small fringe group of physicians who feel that cannabis is harmless, and therefore a brief visit with the patient is appropriate. Well, from a logical point of view, that may be true. From a public relations point of view and from the view of many state medical societies, that is really cutting things a little bit too minimalistic and spending a little bit too little time with the patient. And we want to encourage incorporating your normal medical practices when making an assessment for medical marijuana.
That does make a lot of sense, especially from the public relations point of view. Now, earlier you mentioned GW Pharmaceuticals, and there's something I've been noting in the development of cannabinoid medicine. It seems like there's some out there who are anti-cannabis, but they realize there is some medical benefit, and they're working their butts off to try to put it in tinctures and sprays and pills and inhalers and all of this type of delivery mechanism that can be patented and would presumably cost some money. Where does the AACM stand on the use of whole plant cannabis?
Well, we are very supportive of whole plant cannabis, and we recognize that both cannabis and independent cannabinoids have a role in medicine. I think that Lester Greenspoon, who wrote the well-known book Marijuana: The Forbidden Medicine, has nailed it when he said, look, there is a fight going on now between the pharmaceuticalization of cannabis and having people have the independent responsibility or the independent ability to self-medicate. And that is a fight that's going to go on for a while. I think we've reached a tipping point in terms of medical marijuana. There's absolutely no question whatsoever that cannabis has medical value. And what's disturbing is to see the issue you raised earlier of law enforcement personnel who have no medical training being taken seriously. In the same way that I don't think that I should be taken particularly seriously when talking about a technical point of law, neither should a lawyer be taken seriously when talking about a technical point of medicine.
The American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine, the website is AACMSITE, aacmsite.org, and we're speaking with Dr. David Bierman. And before I let you go, do you have anything else you'd like to tell our listeners?
Well, yeah, I think that they would be wise to seek out a physician who's going to spend more than just a few minutes with them. I think that they feel better about the visit. I think they get more out of the visit, and they leave feeling that I've talked to a real doctor, this is a real medication, they appreciate that it's really helping me. And while, we may charge a few bucks extra because instead of spending 10 or 15 minutes with the patient, we may spend 45 or 60 minutes with the patient. You pay for what you get, and I think people should feel comfortable about their medical use of marijuana when recommended by a physician, and I think if the physician spends more time with them, they'll feel more comfortable.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Bierman, thank you for your work with the AACM, and we hope to get you a lot of people to that site and get more medical professionals to sign up for that gold standard. We appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with a reminder to catch the Rob Van Dam radio show at rvdradio.com, where NORML's Paul Armentano and possibly myself will be joining him to discuss marijuana legalization. Posted the stash early today, so you'd get a chance to flip over to that station and listen to it. Also, speaking of the radio, tomorrow I've got an important conference call with executives from CBS Radio. We're discussing the possibility of creating a live 2-hour weekend show called The NORML Show, complete with call-ins from listeners like you. I'll keep you posted on the progress of that, but if it happens, it'll be my dream come true. Don't forget to get your name in for the NORML Street Teams if you're in the LA or San Francisco area to help promote the NORML Conference. And if you want to get involved with tabling at the Blazed and Confused tour featuring Snoop Dogg and Slightly Stupid, send me an email at stash@norml.org. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.